Alrighty, so first question for you. With 2020 being so wild of a year, what marketing trends do you see changing in 2021?
Man, that's a good question. Obviously, consumer attention has shifted heavily online during that time, right? We already saw a massive internet push, but I think what we're going to see is people are starting to look for new areas to focus. And what I mean by that is that they're not spending time on Facebook the way they used to. They're not spending time on Instagram the way they used to, because people are starting to understand that we've been kind of duped by a lot of these platforms in a way, right? That there's censorship, there's all these major issues that are going on around them. And I think with digital media, where we're kind of going is I think we're going to see some new evolution. I think we're going to see some disruption start to happen in 2021 around these platforms. You know, we're looking at ideas like, is Twitter actually going to separate into two different platforms? And is it not going to be, is there going to be a moderated one versus one that's more of the Wild West? Are we going to see privacy rights and privacy issues and data issues start to change and kind of shift? You know, as a consumer of somebody, I mean, if we're on Facebook or Instagram or any of these platforms, they're taking our data from us, right? I mean, there was a huge Netflix documentary that came out, The Social Dilemma, that kind of talked about this. And I think a lot of millennial generation and younger are really kind of worried about, well, how much is my data actually worth to me as the consumer, right? And if I'm submitting all this data to you on a free platform and you're making money off of me being advertised to, am I entitled to some of that money back because you're taking my data? I think those are going to be some of the cool things that we're going to see start to illuminate in 2021 and moving forward. It's interesting though, isn't it? Like,
it's crazy.
It's not something you would ever think is like, it's not massively revolutionary, but it sets a foundation for so much more in the future. Like, what does a social media platform look like where it's not influenced by one corporation that's private? Is it technically a public commodity just like water and utilities are?
Next question I had. What tips would you give someone who is just starting out online?
What are they doing online?
They don't have anything at all. They realized during COVID that they have no online presence, no Facebook, no Instagram, no fans.
So we're starting from scratch.
So they are starting completely from scratch, and they want to know what are the best tips for someone just starting out.
Identify and find your audience, but before you start posting, contribute to the conversation in their land first to understand the context and the real deep problems of what you're trying to solve as a business. Looking at inside that community, how do they communicate? Where do they communicate? What type of content do they actually consume and share and spend time with? And what is seen as counterproductive or counterintuitive to them in that process? When we truly understand that at a deep level, we're able to really push deeper and faster into these communities and get a business off the ground faster because you already connect with them. They already know you. It's just like going to the networking event, right? If they already know who you are, it's a lot easier just to hop into the conversation. But if you've never been to one before, you know, your first reaction is probably to step back and just observe the room for a second. It's no different with social media land. It's pulling back and saying and looking and, okay, what's going on? What's the cadence? What's the rhythm? Who's at what table? Who seems to be, you know, the massive influencer that everybody knows and that everybody kind of recognizes and they jive with pretty well? How is pulling back and looking at this from that perspective going to impact your business? I think watching first and then contributing to the conversation is going to be your best route forward.
Perfect. This person from California says, I feel like this Black Friday, the only way to succeed is to have a massive sale. Do you have any tips on this?
Yeah. If you can avoid paying for ads this holiday season, there's a ton of different creative ways that you can get engagement, get the sales without burning through ad spend money. You have to think, so in 2020, everybody was scared from March until even still now. People and businesses are afraid to spend money online, but they understand that they have to go all in on the holiday sale if they're going to get their business to succeed into 2021. do you have the financial capability to outbid these individuals on an auction when you know that desperation is in the air? If you know somebody's desperate at an auction, you know that price is going to drive way up. It's no different on social media. They're based on auction platforms. So looking at this and saying, can I financially afford to go to an expensive auction and spend that money for the attention? I don't know. That's up to the individual business owner. Are there strategies around how to do this for free or for even like $5 a day? Absolutely.
This person says, I know this is a very hard question to answer as it can be very gray, but what is the real ROI on creative?
I mean, let's look at it from a perspective of just a YouTube channel. Let's say you've got 500 followers, or let's even go lower, let's go 20. Let's say you've got 20 followers and they have no idea who you are and what you do, but you're able to make one person have a positive impact on their life. What is that worth to you as a business? What is that worth to you as a business owner? Does that change the word of mouth trajectory from everybody that learns about your brand? What is one piece of Facebook content that goes viral worth to you? It's hard to put a return on investment on one individual piece of content or one individual channel. I think when we look at it, we should look at it from, are you educating your customers better? So the sales cycle is shorter. Does that have a direct ROI? Of course it does. You're shortening your sales cycle so you can have more volume of them. Your sales cycle takes 2 months in a service-based business, but through Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and YouTube channels, you're able to shorten that time period down to a few hours of content as opposed to hours and hours of meetings over 2 months. What's the ROI for you on that? You can't get that time back. What a perfect opportunity to connect deeply with your customers, to answer all their questions, to actually engage with them in a fun way. I think ROI, when we're looking at creative, really shouldn't be a direct dollar amount. It should be what's an impact level. And I think that's what we need to be measuring. What's the impact that is going to have on your brand, not what's the direct return on my investment from it.
This person from New York is asking, I see a lot of people pushing this online. Is a personal brand something I should invest in? Absolutely. Your personal brand is going to transcend with you throughout everything you do. And personal brand has gotten so washed down and it's buzzword at this point, right? What is it? I think Gary Vee says it best. It's your personal reputation. It's what do people think of you? How do they interact with you? What's that feeling that they already know? Hey, if I'm going to have a conversation with Alex, his reputation precedes him. Or, hey, I know if I'm going to this event, right, if we look at it from a bigger perspective, if I'm going to this art event that's based on Burning Man or based on Blink here in Cincinnati, I already kind of know what I'm getting into with it, right? Because the brand is already built around that creativity, that ingenuity, that out-of-the-box thinking. It's the same thing with an individual, and having that built ahead of time is going to do what we were just talking about in the last question, which is it's going to shorten and compress time spans. It's going to allow deeper and more meaningful connections. So when you meet people, you're not starting at a foundation level. You're already starting like you've known them for years. On Facebook, in the Ads Manager section, there's 3 little areas that talk about awareness, consideration, and conversion. What do those stand for and what do they mean?
Yeah, awareness, so that's on the left-hand column of that. We're looking at finding people who are most likely to remember your business or your brand. When we're looking at the middle section, that's really where we're focused more on things like traffic. We're sending volume of people through based off of actions that they've taken before. Same thing with conversions, but we're looking for them to have a specific action. And that's really how we start to look at those 3 different columns and how to organize them inside of a strategy. You should really have a mix of all of that inside of your strategy and not just be focused on the conversion. Conversions are always going to be the most expensive because we're looking for people who specifically take these actions, not necessarily people who sometimes do, and we can try through really good creative to get them to convert at a lower cost. So it's just figuring out how to align those inside of your strategy.
This person from Florida says, I have an Instagram with 25K, but no one is converting when I post ads about my promotion. Sorry, I worded this weird. What should I do to get them to convert?
I would ask what the conversion is. If you're asking to get them to buy something and you've not done that before, you really have to look at, okay, well, how interested are those 25,000 people in your product or service or brand? Are they following you just because they know you and they like you as a person? Sure, you can get sales off of that. Celebrity influencers do it all the time. But is it going to be something that's going to grow and push? You got to really look at, does that serve a need for them? Does it help them in their lives? And is it something that's automatic in their lives? Or is it something that we have to try to change their mind that they need? Because those are going to be two totally different conversations. If I'm plugging a product or a service into somebody's life and they're already accustomed to that, it's going to work pretty well. But if I'm having to switch the model or switch their identity or their perspective on things, it's going to be really expensive and almost impossible.